Start streaming. Man, check my corner. I'll. Okay, from now on, I'm not speaking. Okay, I think we're streaming now. Let me check. If anybody in the live chat can tell us if we're streaming, if we have audio or not, please let us know. I think we're streaming now. Can anybody in the live chat? Yep. Let me double check. Yeah, I think we're streaming. How's the audio? Can somebody in the live chat confirm that we have good audio? Beach, Terme, anybody? Yes, okay. Harris is saying yes, we have audio. Okay, great. Parsa.
Hi, hello everyone. Welcome, Dr. Nowzari.
Thank you.
Welcome to the another Atheist Republic live stream. My name is Parsa. Tonight, Armin Navabi and I hosting Dr. Hessam Nowzari. It's a great honor and privilege to have Dr. Nowzari as our distinguished guest for tonight. Dr. Hessam Nowzari graduated from the University of Brussels in Belgium, University of Rennes in France, and University of Southern California Advanced Periodontics program, PhD in Biology and Health Sciences, Director of Advanced Periodontics at USC from 1995-2012, and a Diplomate of American Board of Periodontology. He is the organizer of Nowzari Symposium in Beverly Hills. Website is nowzarisymposium.com. He has 150 publications and 82 on PubMed. We asked Dr. Nowzari if there is a biological basis for different races. Please feel free to share your question with us in the live chat, and I'm going to monitor the live chat, and I'm going to ask your questions from Dr. Nowzari. Armin, do you want to add anything to this?
No, just make sure you leave me some room to ask some questions as well, because I have a lot of views from the opposing side that I might want to bring up. So,
okay.
Yeah, okay, great. Okay, let's get started.
Okay. Yeah, Dr. Nowzari, please.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. And as you said, the topic is that race has no biologic basis, is not supported by science from a genetic point of view. Let me start with one example. Let's talk about Tiger Woods, the great champion. When you talk about him, usually he's celebrated as a black athlete who belongs to this race, black race, champion of golf. Now, his father is African American, but also Chinese, but also Native American. Let's go and see his mom. His mom is from Thailand, but also Chinese, but also Dutch. So why do we think that he belongs to the black race? Why not Chinese? After all, Chinese is shared with his mom's side and his dad's side. Why not Chinese? Because we trust our eyes. We decide based on what we see, the color of his skin. So he's being celebrated as belonging to black race, basically. Now, let's see another example. President Obama. His dad is from Kenya. Dark skin. But his mom is from Kansas. White. And from her side, she's also English and German. Now, if you look at the sexual selves of his parents, President Obama, let's look at their sexual selves. Mom's sexual self is 100,000 times bigger than dad's sexual cell, sperm. And also, the DNA of mitochondria, the power plant of the cell, is provided by the mom, by his mom. So his mom is giving a cell which is 100,000 times bigger than his dad's sexual cell, and his mom is giving him more DNA than his dad. Why do we think that he's black? He belongs to the black race. Again, because we trust our eyes. We evaluate based on what we see. The color of his skin. The question is the following. Should we trust our eyes? And let me go further. Should we trust our brain? Should we trust our brain? And actually the answer is no. We trust science. We don't trust our eyes. We don't trust the color of the skin. We don't trust our brain. We do trust science. I mean, from a scientific point of view, from a genetic point of view, today, modern human has only one race. Before, we had many races, different species on Earth. Not today. Today, no matter who you are, and no matter where you live, in Brazil, in the Philippines, in America, Argentina, there is only one race, Homo sapiens sapiens. There are three words, Homo sapiens sapiens. The first one describes your genus. The second one describes your species. And the third one is your race, or what French people calls it la race, or race. So if tomorrow they ask you, what is your race? Your race is not black. Black race, from a scientific point of view, from a biologic point of view, from a genetic point of view, is meaningless and is wrong. White race is wrong. Red race is wrong. Aryan, Jewish race are wrong. If they ask you the question, the correct answer is that I am sapiens. So, what is your race? I'm sapiens.
Is it possible that from a we have different definitions from race, like when you say from a biological perspective, but what about from a like in sociology? Maybe we have a different definition in race for in sociology than we have in biology, right? For example, like the word law means something different in math than in school of law, right? So is it possible that even if in biology, right now we only have one human race, before we had multiple human races, but now we only have one human race, but in another field, like in sociology, maybe what is referred to as race is what in biology they refer to as different populations. Do you agree that there are different populations of humans with different genetical and biological traits, different populations, like different groups of human populations that have their own unique biological traits that are different from other human populations, and that is what in society we refer to as race, even though that's not what biologists refer to as race, that's what in society we refer to as race?
You know, if you use artificial genetic markers, you just choose one. If you decide only within the Jewish community, you can generate 20 races. Meaningless. If you choose a different kind of genetic marker, you can always pick one. And based on that, only in Russia, you can generate 350 races. And if you go to Africa, you can generate even more. Let's look at the color of the skin. Everybody's heart is red. everybody's blood is red. Everybody's bone is white. And everybody's brain is grayish-white. But we are focusing on the color of the skin. And the question is why? The color of the skin, if you go based on that, we have more than 1,000 different colors. From light to dark. Who is black? So when we are making classification for human beings, there has to be a basis for that. We do have different ethnicities. We do have different countries. We do have different cultures. We do have different languages. But we do not have different races. We have only one.
Do we have different populations with their own distinctive biological traits, though, other than skin?
No. If you look at the biology, the differences within a population is more than differences between populations. That's the problem.
But okay.
If you look at populations, the difference, the diversity, the genetic diversity that you see within a population is more than between the populations.
But is that even if there's a higher variation within a population compared to between variation, doesn't that also suggest that there is some average differences between populations? Even though I understand that there is a higher variation within a population, but is it not true that the averages are also different? For example, I understand like there are different shades of purple and there's different shades of blue, right? And it's very hard to decide when blue ends and purple starts. But that doesn't mean that we don't have a category for blue and we don't have a category for purple, and that this categorization could be useful even though there is still variation within each category, and it's very hard to pinpoint where one category ends and one category when one category ends and when another category starts. That doesn't mean that the categorization as a whole is a completely useless thing to do. Is that not true?
No, it's not true. Only if you are lazy, you are going to process that way. Only if you are lazy. When we are using the word race, is a scientific terminology, is a well-defined scientific terminology. A scientific committee decides whether or not there is a race. You cannot just choose any kind of marker that you want. And usually when it comes to genetic point of view, we are using the famous FST index, fixation index, or fixation statistical test. If you use this test, you realize that the differences between human beings is 0.1. It doesn't even get close to the threshold, so we could say officially that we have a new race. So remember, when we are talking about human beings, if you are going to use any kind of terminology, it has to be scientific. There has to be a scientific approach. You cannot just come home and decide that, well, I see this man, he's tall, he has dark skin, and I see that man, he's completely different. How is it possible that they belong to one race? And I'm here tonight to tell you that you should not trust your brain if it's not educated. You should not trust your eyes if it's not educated. And you should not trust observation. Observation is meaningless. One of the most beautiful achievements of human being is science. And today that's how we process, that's how we decide. So if you look at human beings, Homo sapiens sapiens, we have all exactly the same genes. Our DNA is 6 feet, 2 meters. And surprisingly, you can place that 2 meters, 6 feet DNA inside a cell because it goes around itself. It can go within a cell, within a spot, which is 400,000 times smaller than DNA. Now, if this DNA, you are going to look at it, in different populations. If you go to Germany, if you go to France, if you go to Brazil, if you go to Portugal, Spain, Russia, if you are going to look at it, we all have exactly the same genes. And we were all surprised. And we are here to share this finding with everybody else. Finally, we had this capability, this knowledge, this science, to look at DNA from a microscopic point of view, to read it. And we have 3 billion pairs of letters, if you want.
Dr. Nowzari.
And when we look at that DNA, you're exactly the same. Now, the same gene can have different versions, different types. That's a different story.
Dr. Nowzari.
Yes.
Sorry for the interruption. Before we move forward, I have to ask a question that seems to be questions of some of the audience, like Peach, Doorknob Head, and some others. And they are asking about, some clarification of scientific versus social definition of race.
To talk about the biological point of view. I'm here to talk about the scientific point of view, pure science. And I'm here to tell you that surprisingly, years ago, when we looked at human beings, when we looked at their DNA, we realized that we are all the same. Human beings are different. Not 2 human beings are the same, but we cannot classify them. Every time we decided to classify them, science rejected that because classification has to satisfy certain criteria. You cannot just classify people. So every time it was done, for example, blood type, it was rejected. To the point that today, maybe a dark-skinned individual from Kenya can save you, and your brother, your own brother, cannot.
So what's the definition?
Maybe somebody from the North Pole, somebody from the North Pole, somebody from Bolivia can save you. You go to hospital, you have a problem, can save you, and your own cousin cannot.
So
your own cousin.
What's the definition of race?
Well, we are using that index, FST. You look at the genes, they're all the same. You look at the different versions. Now, when we look at it, it has to pass a threshold. So you could generate the formation of a new subspecies or race. And when we did that, all over the world, surprisingly, it would not even get close to that threshold. It would not even get close to that.
But you're acknowledging that there's another, the social construct definition is separate from the biological definition. So if somebody asks for what is your race or what this is my race, is it possible to, instead of telling them that there is no such thing as race, maybe they're not working with the biological definition. Maybe they're just working with the social definition. And the social definition that I have for race in front of me is race is what is used to categorize people who share biological traits that society thinks are important. So based on that, I understand that that's a social construct. So, but it's a social construct based on some biological reality, like based on some underlying biological reality. Maybe that's
no. Let me stop you. When you say some biological underlying biology, that's wrong and dangerous to say that. That's wrong and dangerous. And second, if people are going to ask me, what's your race? I'm here tonight to ask your viewers to answer on sapiens. On sapiens. I'm not black, I'm not white, I'm not red, I'm not Jewish, I'm not Mongols, Arabs. No, there is only one race. And let's forget about what people are encouraging you to do. We are not here 21st century to think like 18th and 19th century, 16th century. So who cares what definitions are being provided to call it social construct? We are here to apply science. Unfortunately, something miraculously happened. A few years ago, we were capable to go within the cells. A few years ago, we were capable to look at the DNA, proteins, amino acids, enzymes. That's just magnificent. And I'm here to tell you that do not trust your brain. Do not trust your brain. Should we trust our brains? I'm telling you that no, we should not trust our brains. You only trust science, and you can trust your brain when it has been educated. And the best achievement that we have, I said it before, I have to say it again, is science. So don't start bringing back what you are used to that. If tomorrow they are going to ask you, what's your race? You can tell them, by the way, there is only one race today. And now, let me tell your viewers why we do have only one race, why we don't have more. Let me answer that before answering your question. We have had two major migrations from Africa. One close to 2 million years ago, and one close to 100,000 years ago. The first migration generated many races, many subspecies of humans. They're all gone. They're not with us anymore. So about 2 million years ago, we have a big migration from Africa. They went all over the world, possibly. They generated different subspecies, races. One of the most famous one is Neanderthalis, Homo sapiens Neanderthalis. Is not with us anymore. We had Rhodolphensis, Ergaster, Erectus, Abilis. They are not with us anymore. The only one which is left is Homo sapiens sapiens. And why? Because then we have a second migration from this continent, this beautiful continent, Africa. We are all Africans. About 100,000 years ago. There is something that we call it bottleneck. Small number of people, they left Africa. We believe that they were 500 to 2,000. That's all. And if you are here today and you are living in Argentina, if you are living today and you are living in the United States of America, if you are living in Brazil, if you are living in Germany, France, or Austria, it's because these 500 people, they made it. They had no hospital, there was no hotel, there was no food. And giving birth was so dangerous. Human being has one of the most, if not the most dangerous and painful pregnancies. But they made it. Now, about 65,000 years ago, they got to the Middle East. These people, 500 to 2,000. Now, the number is getting smaller. There is something that we call it l'effet fondateur, in French they call it. It means some people, they stay, and some people, they leave. Some, they left to Australia about 55,000 years ago. Some moved to Europe about 40,000 years ago. And some moved to America about 25,000 years ago. We are all the children of that second migration. Now, there are two things that I would like you to pay attention to. Number one is the small number of people that we are coming from, basically, our ancestors. And number two, traveling, going into each other. These Homo sapiens sapiens never had the possibility, never had the opportunity to generate a new race. It could have, it didn't happen, because we were going into each other. Look at yourself, look at America, look at Shakira. Shakira is from Colombia. When she sings, when she dances, she's Colombian. Magnificent artist, magnificent artist. I mean, she's truly Latinos. Listen to her songs, listen to her dancing, look at her dancing, watch her dancing. But wouldn't you be surprised if I tell you that she's in part Lebanese? She's in part Lebanese. Halle Berry, she's half Dutch. And I can go forever. So every time, from a biologic point of view, we tried to classify people. We could not. And again, so there are two reasons for that. We are all the result of that second migration. There are a few hundred people that left Africa, and they were traveling, they were moving around. And number two is that they were going into each other. They never had the possibility, they never gave birth to a new race. They never gave birth to a new subspecies.
Right. So this is again, it's based on the definition of race when it comes to from a perspective of biological studies, right? So yeah, there is no subspecies. Neanderthals were a different race. The human species is just one. We only have one race in the human species right now, based on that definition. But you're saying other definitions of race, which is from social studies. You're saying we should completely dismiss that. But you also say that if you're not educated, you shouldn't try to form an opinion on this from if you're not educated in biology. But what if somebody with social background in social studies, they say like, well, you can't just dismiss our definition of race if you're not educated in social studies, right? So yeah, you have your definition as a biologist based on biology, but within social sciences, we have a different definition of race, and you're saying it's dangerous to use those definitions, but they might say, well, you're not educated in social sciences. In fact, our categorizations of different races based on social sciences, which is a different definition from biology, is actually very useful. The way we define it, we understand that based on the definition that you have of a race, we don't only have one race right now, but based on the definition that social scientists have, there are many races there are many human races, and you're saying that's not a good definition and it should be dismissed. They might come back and tell you, well, if you're not educated in social sciences, maybe you cannot dismiss our categorizations of different races of humans. What would you say to that?
If that's what social sciences would like to say, to be proud of Tiger Woods because he belongs to black race and is wrong. He's a great champion, period. We have decided to call President Obama the first president that belongs to the black race. That's going to cause problem. What was the result of that? What's the result of thinking that way? He's just one of our presidents. That's really what matters. If we continue to think this way, if that's they have decided to do in social sciences, is dangerous, is useless, and we are not going to get anywhere. And besides, easily, within any ethnicity, within any population, you can generate races. If you go today to Iran, easily you can generate more than 100 different races, easily. And they're all fake, they're artificial, and they're useless. If today you go to the United States of America, if you decide to use any of those nonsense markers, you can generate hundreds of different races. It has caused problem, and it's time to stop it. And we do not have something like social science or biological science. We have science, period. We have science. And again, remember, if you go within any kind of ethnicity, within any population, you are going to see more diversity that you would see inter-populations.
So if there's no, is just one question. If there is no, based on the definitions that other people use for race, if you're saying there's no biological basis for that, then how is it that detectives and some scientists are able to use DNA testing to very accurately determine someone's, I understand that it's a social construct and it's made up, but those made up categories, people using DNA tests, like if you give someone's DNA to a scientist or a detective, they could figure out what category, very accurately, which which race they belong to. And also, why is it true? Why is doctors tell us that different races are impacted by certain diseases differently, like heart disease, for example? Why are black people, for example, are impacted by heart disease differently than other people? Why is it that certain race of people are more, on average, way more successful at certain sports than other people?
Let me start with the third one.
Okay.
One of the most stupid sentences I've heard is to say black race has a special talent in sport. I repeat that one more time because that's one of the most stupid sentences anybody can say. Wrong and scientific nonsense. Black people, black race is more talented in sport. First, we do not have such thing, sport gene, that you will pass it to your kids, sport gene. And sport has lots of varieties. Tennis is not swimming. Swimming is not basketball. Basketball is not tennis, and tennis is not gymnastics. There's a huge variation. Now, if you look at basketball, for example, what we see in American TV, on American TV, is dark-skinned champions, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, playing basketball. If you go to Europe, if you go to other countries, basketball is not popular. They do not like it. But when you do go to China, you generate Yao Ming. You generate Yao Ming. Now, if you look at tennis, the majority of tennis players, they had light skin color, light color skin, until we had Serena Williams and Venus Williams. If you go to playing golf, the same thing. So please, that's really so dangerous, has no basis whatsoever. No basis whatsoever. Saying that black race has a special talent in the sport is really insulting and has no reality. Now, going to doctors that they believe that you can treat people based on their race, it's only because they are lazy. There is such a huge overlap in between the populations that is so dangerous to make such a statement. So any doctor who makes such a statement today really doesn't know what he or she is talking about. And then going back to the first one, now how is it possible that detectives, they can identify a person based on their DNA? That's very simple, because not two human beings are the same. Every single human being is different. You are not like me. There has never been a person like you before. There is no person like you today, and there will be no person like you in the future. Every single human being is unique. Every single human being is unique, is different. Now, we have genes, for example, for your eye color. If I look at the DNA, I can tell you the color of your eyes. If I look at your DNA, I can tell you the color of your skin. Period. That's all it is. And that, remember, anything else, when it comes to violence, when it comes to generosity, when it comes to love, when it comes to anger, there is no gene for that. There is no gene for that. Don't look at it. Don't look for it, because you won't find it. Monoamine oxidase A, being the gene of violence, was a fraud. Oxytocin, the hormone of generosity, is a fraud. So we have two different things that we should not mix them together. We have traits, and then we have capacities. And of course, because not two human beings are the same, I can look at your DNA, and then I can provide that information to a detective, helping that detective to identify you, to find you, or to see whether or not you have committed this crime. Has nothing to do with classifying a group of people into a race.
Dr. Nowzari?
Yes.
Beej is asking that if you are aware that Sweden doesn't use race anymore, they do talk about cultures though?
Wonderful. That's what we have to do. We have different cultures. We have different languages. We have different cuisines. We have different musics. We have different dances. We have different countries. That's what we have to celebrate. We have to celebrate different cultures. I agree with that.
Okay, Moose asking that if there is only one race, why do humans classify themselves by skin color? Does one's skin color even matter?
Because we fall in the trap of observation. That's a big mistake that we have been committing for centuries. We trust our eyes, or we trust our brain. For centuries, we decided to say that Earth is flat because that's what we see. Now we have the opportunity, finally, to have a scientific approach. That's the reason. We have to say goodbye to our observations. We have to say goodbye to our preconceived ideas, and we have to be open-minded to what biology and genetics have to offer.
Can you explain what is the explanation behind the different average IQ levels among different, I don't know, you say don't call it race, let's say populations? Different.
You know, this IQ business again, is useless, is dangerous, and honestly, I'm sorry to say that it's so stupid. It should be eliminated. It's the same thing. Human beings, they have different capacities. Human beings are different, but it's not like army that you would say because you are good in geometry, you are more intelligent. That's the problem that we have. Or because you are good in math, you are more intelligent. The same thing. Remember, we cannot categorize people based on that. You can, it's very much possible that the next Albert Einstein may be a dark-skinned girl in Ethiopia. It's very much possible. Just look at the data. When we go within populations, we find what you think is related to some other categories of human beings. You can find them within any population, any population.
So do you deny that there is different average IQs between different populations, or what other people refer to as race?
That's absolutely wrong. It's unbelievable. This is just talking like Joseph Mengele, 1940, 1939, 1940, during the Second World War. No, of course not.
The data is wrong?
The data is wrong, absolutely.
How do you know?
Are you telling me? No, I mean that there is no scientific data. I know all the data. Are you telling me that there are races that are more intelligent than others? That's what you are saying.
Well, I mean, hasn't data collected? Hasn't the collected data show that people from North Asia, like Japan and China, they have the highest average IQs compared, and compared to other races? Is that not a fact? Is that not the data that was collected?
Let me tell you something. Today, if you're in any decent scientific center, Europe, Japan, or America, today, if you are inside any decent scientific center, and if you say that, probably they would fire you.
Is that because they're insulted or because it's anti-scientific? Like, it seems like...
Because because there is no basis for that. Forget about some Mickey Mouse studies. We have lots of Mickey Mouse studies. We don't care about that. You can always have papers, but paper has to have quality, has to have good methodology. And when you use good methodology, the answer is that saying that, for example, Asians are more intelligent than white race, and white race is more intelligent than black race, is going back in time. It really is dangerous, has no scientific basis whatsoever, really has no scientific basis. A person who was talking a lot about that, I forgot his name, fortunately, but it was from Canada. And all those studies have been rejected. There were a small number of studies, poorly done. And again, really, it's time to, I'm really surprised to hear that from you, honestly, too. I'm really surprised to hear that.
Why?
That today, 21st century, you are so comfortable with technology, telling me that, isn't that true, that Asians are more intelligent than white people and white people are more intelligent than black race?
I'm just looking at the data. And if you're telling me that data is poorly collected or wrong, then I don't know. I'm just looking at these are published articles under reputable, publications. So if you're telling me these are bad studies, I don't know how they managed to get published on these publications. So I don't know how else to tell what's data and what's not.
I mean, we have 7,000 medical journals, maybe more. You can publish anything you want in any of them. Let's say, for example, you believe in acupuncture. Where are you going to publish your paper? In the Journal of Acupuncture. Do you think that they're going to reject it? Let's say that you believe in Eastern medicine. You can easily find lots of journals dedicated to Eastern medicine, Chinese medicine. Do you think that they're going to reject it? So we have lots of journals, but we do not have too many good journals.
Okay.
I would like you to refer you to Jan Ioannidis from Stanford, who analyzed the quality of publications, scientific publications. And that's his famous announcement that the majority of our scientific research publications, not infomercial, scientific research publications are flawed.
Is
Don't trust.
is PubMed.gov a good source? PubMed?
No, PubMed, it means public medical library. Now, if your journal is a member, they're going to publish the abstract, and you may have access to full article if you're a student. That's what it is.
So if I find a scientific publications under PubMed.gov, and I look at the number of times it was cited, and the places that it was cited, and the other reputable people that have used it as a source, is that not a good way to recognize that this is a good study or not? Is that not the best way to figure that out?
No, not at all. That's the worst way. That's the worst way.
Okay. So
because the article is popular. There are lots of famous articles that are very popular and they are being cited a lot. No, absolutely, that's something you do not want to do. There is something we call it methodology. When you read an article, you use the principles of methodology to dissect it, to see whether or not that is a good article. No, you don't go because the article is famous. You do not decide because the article is being cited. You do not decide. Actually, the majority of articles being cited in the media are junk science or pseudoscience. Let me tell you something. It may be interesting for your viewers. There are lots of people that they believe that we are going back to endarkenment. Before we had enlightenment, right? Enlightenment. We are going back to endarkenment. Today, we have lots of publications of poor quality. Today, we have too many journals. Anything can get published. Today, we have media that are not qualified to dissect the articles. So people are bombarded by data, by information. So you can go wherever you would like to go. But what you have to do, as I said it before, you have to use the language of science. And if you use the language of science, really doesn't matter where you go. I'm not sharing with you my views. Who cares about my views? My views, like your view, has absolutely no value. Let me repeat that one more time, loud and clear. My views, they have absolutely no value. Your views, they have no value either. What really matters is science. What matters is science. Now, if today you go to Paris, if you go to Washington, if you go to Los Angeles, if you go to Japan, everybody's going to tell you the same thing, that today we have only one race, sapiens. Categorizing people based on their race and intelligence is a fraud. Saying that black race is more talented in sport indeed is humiliating, and there is a reason for talking that way. There is a reason for talking that way.
But what if that is, how do we know? Because maybe that's not the intention. Like maybe, I mean, is it really fair to accuse every scientist or anybody that is trying to look at this objectively and trying to figure out what's true? When you say there is a reason for talking like that, you're accusing them of racism, right? But what if they're not? What if that's, even if you think their science is wrong or their information is wrong, is it really fair to just accuse everybody that is just trying to objectively look at the data of racism, even if we disagree with their data? Maybe that is not their intention.
Yes, it's fair. Yes, it's fair. I will tell you why. Because science is not a travel agency. Science is not a travel agency. Science is not a hotel. Science is not an airline company that we have first class, we have business class, and we have economy. And please forgive my publication because it's economy. Please forgive my poor quality paper because my hotel has 2 stars. Science is not a travel agency. There is only one category in science, and that's first class. And if people are not capable to provide quality publications, they do not have to do it. But why they do it? Again, I really refer you to Jan Ioannidis from Stanford. For promotion, for getting a grant, for getting invited to give talks. So there are too many reasons. But remember, going back to your question, no, I don't care. I don't care to call them whatever I may call them. I really don't care. All I care about is science. And again, as I said, science is black and white.
So how
science is not a range, Armin. Science is not a range. Science does not have first class, business class economy.
So how could we tell as non-scientists? How could you're a scientist, and I'm looking at these publications, and they seem to be also scientists. They got their articles published. So as a non-scientist, if you're telling me this is science, and I'm looking at peer-reviewed academic research, and they're saying this is also science, and they are scientists, then how can I tell that that's not science? Like if you're telling me that if I did my homework and I'm looking at the fact that they're published on a reputable publication, and the fact that being cited by other reputable source, scientists and other reputable publications, if you're telling me that's not the good way for me to recognize that this is true science, then how could I, as a non-scientist, tell what's science and what's not science?
Well, you have to educate yourself. That when you read an article, by educating yourself, you can dissect it. You can start with biases. We have lots of biases. Bias is a statistical bias. It really doesn't mean that the person wants to lie, but we have lots of biases. For example, selection bias, attrition bias, performance bias, lots of different biases, publication bias. Which kind of statistical analysis they provided? Was it Bayesian statistics? Was it inferential statistics? And then in which country it was done? In which journal it was published? Who are the authors? And then after that, you go into that article. Is methodologies strong? Is methods are done correctly? That study can make any conclusion or not. So let me say it clear and loud. A few years ago, I organized a symposium with Stanford. I really encourage you to watch it. And it was all inspired by John Ioannidis and Steve Goodman from Stanford. That we do have lots of junk science publications. And I'm not talking about infomercial. I'm talking about so-called scientific publications. The majority of them. Actually, I remember in one of my symposiums, we asked Dr. Goodman to dissect an article which was awarded. And publicly he dissected, and he realized that it should have never been accepted for publication. So now we are being bombarded by data. But really what matters is not data. What matters is data analysis. And remember, from epidemiological studies, from observational studies, from case reports, from case series, you cannot make any conclusion. And we do that routinely. I repeat it one more time. If you have a case report, if you have a case series, if you have epidemiological studies, you cannot make any kind of conclusion. It can encourage you to generate hypotheses that they have to be tested. But you cannot make any conclusion. And we do that routinely. We look at the population, we make a conclusion. We do some kind of epidemiological studies, and we make a conclusion. We look at some basketball games, case series, and we make a conclusion.
Dr. Nowzari, sorry
Yes.
for the interruption. I'm reading some questions. Please try to answer them, as short as you can, so I can ask more questions, okay? So Beach asking that, would Dr. Nowzari say it would be easier to talk about genes turn up or down instead of like a difference in gene? The meaning is that instead of saying genetic differences, it sounds like genes are different, but they are not. They're just, express them differently.
Absolutely. Very good point. Genes are the same. We all have the same genes. When we say that we have 90% similar, 95%, 98%, these are all wrong. We have exactly the same genes. But our genes sometimes, they can have 100, 120, 140 different versions. That's a different thing. I repeat it one more time. Genetic expression first, and genes are two different things. For many years, we believed, or people they were believing, that you are your genes. There is some kind of determinism in your genes. Maybe it was promoted by Richard Dawkins. There is some kind of determinism in your genes. There is a code, and the code decides what's going to happen. And that's not true, number one. And number two is that we all have the same genes, but our genes, they can have different types. And that's why you can have a dark skin with the same group, blood group, as a light skin. Or when it comes to your skin also, the same thing. So when we are talking about genes, let me finish it with this one, that we have exactly the same genes, Homo sapiens, sapiens. But that our genes, they can have different versions, different forms, different types.
Wait, I don't understand.
It's different from different genes.
Armin, please give me some time to read those questions. Aditan asking that he is asking questions. I mean, probably those are the same question in different way. For example, he's asking in an article dated a few years ago mentioning IQ depending on the person's hair color. Or another question, he's asking that is there any relationship between races and their average height? So
no, I'm telling you, I mean, we tried to generate races. We cannot. Again, if you are going to declare a new race, you have to follow rules. You cannot just decide based on the color of the skin. You have to follow rules. And something which is used a lot within scientific community is fixation index. You cannot just decide to generate.
All right, let's just refer to it as populations. Is it not true that certain populations of humans have genetically, and what other people refer to as race, we're just going to refer to it as populations? Is it not true that certain populations of humans are genetically taller than other populations? Like, for example, when I go to the Philippines,
let me stop you.
Let me just give you an example. Like, Filipinos on average are genetically shorter than Europeans. Is that not accurate to say?
Yes. So what has to do with race?
Well, I'm not saying. Well, I'm just saying what people we're going to refer to it as population. What other people. So if that just becomes a semantic issue. So I understand you're saying race is biologically not a good term to use. So I'm just going to refer to what other people refer to as race. I'm just going to refer to it as population. And then if we disagree.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. First, there is something we do have. We call it bottleneck. There is a certain group of people that they share lots of similarities. That together they went to a different country, different city, number one. And number two, let's say that tomorrow you are going to have, for example, in the Philippines, I think they have 80 million people. Let's say you are going to have, for example, 100,000 people that are really tall. They're not Filipinos anymore.
But that's not what what it was said. That's not what it was said. Nobody said that there are no outliers. People are talking about average. People are talking about averages. Averages.
No.
Is it?
Okay. No. I'm telling you that I'm here tonight to say let's stop this nonsense, archaic type of thinking.
Why?
If you go to a country that people they think they are short, like for example, Americans they're convinced that Japanese and Chinese are short. They're not that tall. I'm telling you that. Would you be surprised if you go to China and you realize that we have lots of millions of people as tall as Yao Ming?
But nobody is saying that. But somebody might push back and saying the way you're suggesting that we treat this information is actually more dangerous, right? Because they're saying that, so if we're denying reality, because every time we're talking about averages, like it's undeniable that Filipinos on average on average, are shorter than Europeans. And yes, we could find many examples that is not the case. But the fact that we can find many examples that is not the case. We could find many tall Filipinos, and we can find many short Europeans. But it's undeniable that on average, an average Filipino is shorter than an average European. And if we deny that, that is actually more dangerous, because if they are different in height, they probably are different in many other things as well, including things that maybe it's important for their health, things that might be important for how
really, let me stop you here. Because what you are saying is really dangerous.
Okay.
Let's go to Korea. There is a country which is suddenly divided in South Korea and North Korea. They are brothers, they are cousins, parents and kids. Suddenly overnight, the country is divided. Today, the population, the same Koreans living in North Korea, they are 1 or 2 inches shorter than South Koreans. South Koreans actually now, they are tall and they're powerful and they're strong.
Right.
That's very important. What you said is so dangerous. I mean that you're going back to, you're talking like Hitler, really.
I'm talking like Hitler.
Yes, really you do. I mean that what you said, that maybe we can use it, maybe it has some indication. It means that you're forcing the audience to go that direction. And I'm here tonight to tell you that was so dangerous to use maybe and your eyes and your observation. And that's why I'm giving you the example of Korea. No, let me finish it. You have a country within such a short period of time. You have North Koreans that are shorter and they're thinner. And you have South Koreans that are much taller.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm not denying that people, they have different heights. I'm saying that today, thanks to technology, thanks to knowledge, thanks to science, why not respecting individuals? Why not respecting human being? Why not respecting Elizabeth for who she is? Why not respecting Emmanuel for who he is? Why we want to put them into a category? Because anytime we have tried to put them in a category thinking that it has some benefits, we have failed. And we have failed.
But I don't know. I wasn't at all suggesting that we shouldn't respect people. I don't know if I ever suggested that at all. But I do. I mean, accepting the role of environment does not mean that there is no role for genetics, right? So, for example, obviously, if growing up, if I have certain food and do certain exercises, if the impact of environment on my height is undeniable, right? But just because we point out to the role of the environment does not negate the role of genetics. For example, the example that you gave is an example that I use to show, South Korea and North Korea are always the best examples, the best case to show the example of environment, because they have the same background, same many things. But the Filipinos that live in Europe, that have been raised in Europe, are also on average shorter than Europeans that are grown and raised in Europe. Do you know what I mean? And Europeans that have been born in Philippines, like for example, if the Germans that have been born and raised in Philippines, on average, are also taller than Filipinos here. So yes, environment has a role, but does genetic have no role at all? Just because
Who said genetic has no role? Who said genetic has no role?
That's what.
Of course.
I didn't say you said that. I'm asking.
No, but we are here tonight. No, genetic has a role. Environment has a role. And there is so many other things. We call it random distribution has a role, or random uncertainty has a role. It's not all genetic or environment. There are other factors as well. And there is no genetic determinism. That's what I said. But I repeat, we have genes, we have environment, and we have uncertainty, and we have the random distribution of uncertainty. And then we have a genetic bottleneck. And then we have a migration of 500 to 1,000 people. And this genetic bottleneck effect and funding effect, l'effet fondateur. People, some stay and some they go. And that has generated, as you said, people that when you look at them, they have some similarities. But what's the relationship with the topic of tonight? The topic of tonight is that do we identify enough differences among Homo sapiens sapiens, among human beings, to say that we have black race, we have white race, we have Aryan race, we have Jewish race, we have Christian race. And I'm here tonight to tell you that if you use the language of science, if you use the language of genetics, if you use the language of science, we cannot today generate races. Or if we do generate races the way you are trying to, I can generate 10,000 races, Armin. I can generate 10,000 races. But in science, you cannot arbitrarily just pick up a marker and base that marker, for example, the height of the Filipinos, to put them in a race category. You cannot just use a category, a marker, like the color of the skin, to put them in the race category. That's what I'm saying. So of course people are different, and of course populations, they have similarities.
Okay, so the reason why it's relevant to the topic of tonight is because it just seems like the only issue that we're having with regards to that is the terminology. Because a lot of the things that people are saying about race might be only inaccurate because they're using the word race, and that's biologically an inaccurate term to use. But it seems that if they just switch from using race to population, all of a sudden everything that they said about race now becomes accurate just because now they're using the right terminology. So it just seems to be a semantic thing that they're just getting the wrong term. But again, the basis of what they're saying might still be based on correct if they just use the right term, which is population, because all these biological traits that are different, it is still there. And you're saying like, okay, so if we want to come up with these categories, you could come up with 200 or 1,000. Yes, but categorization could be useful if it's done right. Obviously, if you come up with a way of categorizing that you come up with, I don't know, too many or too few, then maybe you're coming up with methods of categorization that are useless. But that doesn't mean that all forms of categorization, whether you call it race or population, because you're saying race is not the right term, let's go with population. That doesn't mean that all forms of categorization is harmful. And you mentioned like Hitler and Nazis and stuff like that. The example I give because some people might suggest that maybe we are avoiding real data because of the memory that we have of World War II and the fear that we have of how it was used by a certain group of people. And because of that fear, and because we keep saying that something is dangerous or something is insulting, then maybe some people may think that we're just avoiding facts because of this fear that we have. And the example I give, again, I'm just asking these things, please don't get upset with me, okay? The example I give is that, well, Nazis and white supremacists try to misuse Darwinism and evolutionary biology as well. We don't deny evolutionary biology. We don't deny Darwinism and his contributions just because it was misused. Instead of some people suggest, instead of fighting these questions and trying to deny facts or data. Again, I'm not saying these are facts or data, but this is how some other people might think that what's happening is we're denying that facts or data. We should fight the misuse of the truth rather than fighting the truth, because they think these are hard data that we're denying just because we are afraid of its misuse by, I don't know, racists and white supremacists, but that these are actually hard data that can't be ignored. How would you, I know you disagree with a lot of things that I said, but how
No. Yeah. I disagree with everything you said.
Okay, good.
Whatever you said is completely useless.
Okay.
For many reasons. Number one, we are in 21st century. We have artificial intelligence. We have technology. We have digital information. We have access to DNA with a very, very small price. We do not have to spend millions of dollars to identify people based on their genetic codes. What was billions of dollars now is few $1,000s, few $100s. And that's a wonderful gift of science. We have to use this gift of science and stop all these nonsense and useless categorizations. And number two, let me ask you a question then, that I said at the beginning of my presentation. Who is Tiger Woods? Let me follow you. He's in this population. Where would you put him, Tiger Woods? Is he Chinese?
I don't know. I haven't done it.
No, you can. No, easily you are dividing the population. Why not? Why you cannot do it? Just use what you suggest.
Well,
What's Tiger Woods? No. Tell me, what is Tiger Woods?
I don't know. I need to do a DNA test probably.
No. Why? Why not using what you are suggesting or your friends?
Well, I didn't suggest anything. I didn't suggest how.
No, you just said that you are just giving talk about Filipinos, tall, short. I'm telling you, they are useless.
No, I didn't suggest. I did not suggest how. I don't know how to. What I was suggesting is because obviously people smarter than me have to come up with better. I think the whole idea of Can I respond? No, what I was suggesting is that throwing out the whole concept of categorization just because there's bad ways of doing categorizing it doesn't mean that our forms of categorizing is bad. What I was I'm not saying that I have a good way of categorizing based on genetics. I never said that. I don't have access to DNA samples of Tiger Woods. I do recognize that just visually trying to categorize people seems like very useless. I never suggested that just visually categorizing people is a good way of doing it. I think for medicine and maybe scientific reasons, maybe based on DNA and based on other things, there might be useful way of categorizing people. That's no sign of disrespect. That's no sign of. That doesn't mean that we cannot treat.
It's useless. It's
okay.
Useless. It's useless. Let me ask another question.
Mm-hmm. But if it's you're saying it's useless.
What's President Obama?
Again, I did. That's what I'm.
Okay, I'm going to.
No, but I don't know if maybe I'm not explaining well. I just said I don't have access to President Obama's DNA, and I don't have an access to a lab to be able to, and I don't have access to good categorization methods. I don't know how to answer that. I just think. I'm just thinking that just because I don't have access to it, and just because there are useless ways of categorizing people, that doesn't mean that there are no good ways of categorizing people.
No, I will give it to you.
Okay.
I give you information about President Obama's DNA. How about that? If I give it to you, would you promise me to put him in a category?
No, I'm not. I mean, you're asking a non-scientist to come up with a good scientific method of categorizing people.
I will give it to you. The same way. How come you are reading all these scientific articles? Anything you would get from those scientific articles, I will give it to you, and I beg you, put him in a category.
I mean, we could try. I don't think.
No, I'm not done. I'm just challenging Armin. Would you do that if I give you all the information?
No,
including his
I can't.
DNA?
I'm not going to promise anything that I don't know if I'm going to be able to do. Here's an example. I'm not going to promise that at all. Like, I know there is a category of colors called blue, and there's a category of colors called purple. I know those categories exist, but there's probably colors that you could give me that I can't, it's going to be very difficult for me to decide whether this is blue or purple. There are many shades that it's going to be hard for me to decide whether this shade is going to belong into the blue category and in the purple category. I recognize that, but that does not mean that the blue purple categories is completely useless. They're very useful. Putting colors in different categories are useful, even though there are areas that is hard for us to put in each category.
Okay, but let me finish by me doing that.
Okay.
If you ask me who is President Obama, I would say that he's a human being, like anybody else.
Okay.
What is his race? I would say he's sapiens. And he would tell me, how about medicine? I'm going to tell you that thanks to technology, thanks to artificial intelligence, thanks to low cost of data gathering today easily we can go within a cell of a human being, get lots of information outside. Let's respect the human being. Let's stop all these classifications. They are useless, they have been useless, and they will continue to be useless. Forget about that. And if I came here, I came here to give a message to your viewers that is simple. Don't get confused. Don't fall into this trap that they are tall, they are short, they are dark, they are light. Today's science shows that because of the migration of our ancestors 100,000 years ago, we are all the result of 500 to 2,000 people, period, all of us. And we have not been on Earth long enough to create a significant diversity, giving birth to different races. But again, I would like to finish with this one. The future, our future, including in medicine, including data, really relies on low cost of technology and artificial intelligence. That's why every single human being is different. Every single human being is different. There has never been anybody like you. There is nobody like you. And in the future, there is nobody like you. And today we have the technology to communicate with you versus placing you in a category.
So what if somebody suggests...
Armin,
Armin,
please let me ask some question because we have several questions in live chat.
Okay.
So Alexa is asking what DNA is. I think there's a Jewish name, TSVI Mizinai. I don't know the guy, but TSVI Mizinai referring or referencing or referring.
I don't know.
Okay.
No.
And then the second question, most asking, what do you think of political race relations?
I'm saying that there is only one race today, sapiens. Period.
Parsha, don't ask the questions that have already been answered, okay?
Okay. So RPG asking, since we are all one race, the human race, would it be better to refer to our physical and sociological differences as our ethnic?
Within the same population, you are going to see more differences than between population. For example, if today you go to Russia, I mean that you are going to see so many different ethnicities. If today you go to the United States of America, only in Los Angeles, you just walk for 10 minutes. You just walk for 10 minutes. If you go to any country today, because over the last 100,000 years, we did not stop migrating into each other and getting married with each other. That's why we have genetic similarities, because we have not stopped it. And today, look at yourself. You are not in your native country. Look at Armin. He's not in his native country. This is our history. This is our history since our migration over 100,000 years ago from Africa.
Right. Can I?
Okay, Dr. Nowzari, let me ask this last question, and then I'll give you time.
Okay.
Okay. So question. The last one is that could you please shed some light on ancestry versus race?
You know, you have one father and one mother. But if you go back, there are going to be 4. If you go farther back, there are going to be 8 and 16 and 32 and 64. If you go only 10 generations, you would have 1,024 ancestors. And if you go back only 20, you are going to have about 1,048,000 different ancestors. So really, from a genetic point of view, we are the children of our population. We are the children of our population. Now, if you keep going back and back and back, it's going to be billions of them. But we did not have billion people on Earth. So what happens then? So I repeat one more time, that's very important. If you just go back 10 generations, you have 1,024 ancestors, grandmothers and grandfathers. All of them, they have contributed to your genetic structure. Now, if you go back only 20, they are going to go over 1 million, 1,048,000 you have. Now, if we go back even farther, then you are going to see that, but we don't have so many people on Earth. Now, what happens? Because we were sharing them. We were sharing them with each other. And that explains why today we all belong to the same race of sapiens, basically. So we are all children of the population, and where the population is since our migration all over the world.
Right. Can I just say something that I know you disagree with, but I want to make a case for why even if there's a disagreement with people that are categorizing people based on the populations that they belong to or based on certain genetical traits, maybe they're not because you're saying that way of thinking is very dangerous, right? But
useless is useless.
Right, useless and dangerous. Okay, I understand that you're saying that, but I want to suggest a way of looking at it that might be at least not dangerous, even if you think it's useless, right? So, for example, if I say these certain shades of colors are blue and these are purple, I'm by no means suggesting that blue is inherently better than purple or better than green, or green is better than blue. I'm just saying these are very similar and belong to this category, and these are very similar and belong to this category. I'm not saying this is superior than the other one, right? And given that some people use these categories, and these categories are not going to go away, wouldn't it be better to focus on the fact that these categories, even if they exist, that doesn't suggest that does not suggest that any one of these are superior to superior to other ones, or that people deserve to be treated equally regarding of the categories that exist, right? So if there are biological, you also agree that yes, we have environmental factors that are responsible for differences between populations, and there are also genetical reasons for why there are differences between population. But the thing is that a lot of people seem to want to deny these genetical influences, and to me it seems that they're suggesting that if there is any genetical sources for these differences, that might lead to racism or race supremacy. To me, that is dangerous if we try to hide that information, because if that information gets out, then it seems like that's a win for the white supremacists and the racists. But if we highlight those differences, and if we don't move away from those categories, or at least accept them, we could then move past and be like, okay, these differences exist and some of them is genetical, but that does not mean that any of these categories deserves to be less happy or have more rights or less rights or to be treated differently. These categories exist. Some of them are environmental, some of them are genetic, but still, because the variances within each population is higher, people should still be treated even if we lived in a world where the variations between the populations was much, much higher than the variations within each one of these populations, that does not lead to the conclusion that we shouldn't treat people like individuals, that we shouldn't be respecting people, and that people deserve to be happy no matter what, and that people shouldn't be respected no matter what. But if we keep denying that, then we are giving it to the white supremacists, that if we lose this argument, then you have won, and now we could treat people differently. I think we could move past that and be like, whatever the differences between the biologies are, everybody deserves to be happy. Shouldn't that be the focus of our arguments and attention, to fight racism and
Look, why did you invite me tonight? You invited me tonight to see whether or not within scientific community, not my view.
Okay.
Who cares about my view? Who cares about my view? Who cares about my view? You invited me tonight to see what the scientific community is saying about the word race. Now, and I told you that race is a scientific terminology. You cannot just use it in any form, any shape that you want. And then when we are looking from the archaeology point of view, from biological point of view, proteins, enzymes, DNA, we have concluded, all biologists, there is no exception really, that the word race for human beings, for current humans, there is only one. And we have called it they have called it, the scientific community has called it sapiens. And they have asked people that if they are going to ask you the following question, what your race is, you must have the scientific answer. And the answer is sapiens. Having said that, every single human being is different. From a genetic point of view, we are different. We have the same genes, but genes, they have different versions. We are different. Every single human being is different. But something which is interesting, something which is important, and we have to pay attention to that, is that currently in 21st century, we have something that we call it artificial intelligence. Our brain does not have the capacity, does not have the capability of such analysis. Artificial intelligence does. Artificial intelligence can do things that we couldn't even think about that. Imagine that only 10 or 15 years ago. So now, thanks to this artificial intelligence, thanks to the knowledge that has been provided to us by the biologists, why we keep insisting on categories that are absolutely useless. They're useless. They're not going to get us anywhere. They're completely useless. And then I would like your viewers to know that from a scientific point of view, that's not my view. Saying that we have a race which is more talented, we have a race which is more intelligent, they have a higher IQ, they have all been rejected in science. I really don't care which scientific paper you are going to show me. In a real scientific community, they have been rejected. They have been rejected strongly. Honestly, I'm really surprised to hear that. Maybe because I'm all the time within the scientific community. I do not remember when was the last time that somebody presented a paper in a scientific community, in a symposium. I really do not remember when was the last time saying that I have proven, I have shown me also that, for example, Asian race is more intelligent than white race, and white race is more intelligent than black race. That's really basically the bottom line of my presentation. You invited me to describe the word race from a scientific point of view, and I would like to summarize everything the way that I just told you. So tomorrow, if a police officer, an inspector in the airport, they are going to ask you, what's your race? You have to tell them, sapiens.
Okay. Or Parsha, do you have any more questions? I have one more question. So, I mean, my question. Okay, so here's my question: is that then, if I can't rely on, so you're saying you're surprised you haven't seen these studies, and in good scientific circles, nobody says something like this. So, do you have any advice for, like, if I want to educate myself as a non-scientist, and I'm looking at academic research that has seemed to have been published in places where, you know, reputable publications get published, and I'm seeing scientific research that suggests otherwise, you know, suggests against the things that you're saying. What do you suggest to me as a non-scientist that is looking to educate himself and is looking at this research and is seeing something different from what you're saying tonight? How am I supposed to know what's true and what's not true?
You know, if you do not know how to read articles, then you can trust, for example, in France, Musée de l'Homme, in Paris, there are authorities. For example, you can trust Academy of Science, there are authorities. You can trust, for example, the Academy of Anthropologists. We have many of them that are very reliable. So if you cannot read it yourself, at least refer to respected organizations that we do have. Also, we have some teams that they would answer your questions. How? They would analyze articles for you. They would analyze articles for you, and they would tell you whether or not what the overall conclusion has to be. And finally, we have some universities that you can refer to them. For example, I've enjoyed, loved really listening to Jan Ioannidis, listening to Steve Goodman from Stanford. So basically, number one, I really encourage you to learn methodology. What's the language of science? Is the methodology good? It's not easy, but I really think that you should do it. Everybody should do it. So you don't get fooled. Remember, we have more than 1 million publications only in English when it comes to health. We have 1.5 million publications every year in Chinese when it comes to health. And practically, more than 90% of them are useless, We have 7,000 journals that are mainly infomercials. And that's why when you watch TV, one day they say coffee is good for you, the next day they say, oh, a new study shows that coffee is bad for you. Still, we don't know if egg is good for you or not. Still, we don't know if vitamins, you should take them, you should buy them, or you should not. Still, we don't know anything about anything really. Look at the progress we have made with iPhone. Look at the progress we have made in aviation. Look at the progress we have made in digital information. And look at the progress that we have made in medicine. Not a lot, not a lot. We are still doing chemotherapy. We are still using radiotherapy. We are still treating people as average people. So that one main reason is that even our educated people, they do not know methodology because we don't teach it. In a school, at our universities, we do not teach how to write, how to read effectively. We do not teach what good article is. We do not teach what good research is. And actually, in the United States of America, our highest organizations, officially, they have acknowledged that that's a big problem that we have in Western countries. We do not know anymore what is good, what's bad. We do not know anymore how to evaluate.
I just quickly need to respond to that because the suggestion that you have made is what I tried to do, and if you're saying what I have is wrong, then I have failed, because I mean, you're a scientist and you're telling me these are the sources that I have to look at to, but then I also talk to some other scientists and I don't know, they tell me that these are the sources that I need to look at to. These are the authority voices here. So if I just go based on what people telling me that this is the authority source, and I mean, I try to understand the methodology, I try to look at it and I try to look at it and see if it's biased or not. I try to look at the source of the funding. I try to adjust for all of that. And I mean, if I at the end of the day have to rely on a scientist telling me this is a source of authority, and that's I should trust it because of somebody telling me that this is sort of authority, and a different scientist telling me no, this is an authority source, then isn't that similar to faith rather than like if I'm just relying on somebody telling me this is an authority source rather than if is there any other name to call this than faith?
How it's done.
But there seems to be disagreements.
Many times within seconds you can reject it. Within seconds. Remember, I said it before, I'm going to say it again. When it comes to science, science is not a travel agency. And also, we have lots of academies. We have Academy of Science. We do have people that are reliable. We do have references. But if you decide that your reference is a wishy-washy kind of meeting organized here or there, or the authority is the media, for example, or a famous person, for example, that's a problem that we have. Otherwise, if you look carefully around you, you have lots of references, you have lots of possibilities. But I really strongly advise you, if that's what you're going to do, to promote science, you really have to be capable to dissect it. So for one reason, that you reject it or you accept it. You cannot be in the middle.
What do you say to people that might be concerned that that there's a bias that people like you might have? Again, I'm not saying you do have, but what about the people that might be concerned that you are so afraid of racism and white supremacy and the recent history that we had with white supremacy, that you might be biased against certain facts? That because you're really trying to avoid something that science was used for some really great harm in our recent history, that we are so scared of touching certain data, and that might be like maybe without even knowing you're being biased against certain fact. How would you address their fear that you might be biased?
No, let's say that we would discover we have different races. What's wrong with that? Before we had different races, in the future we may have different races. Today we don't. Today we don't. But we cannot predict future. No. Maybe tomorrow we are going to have different races. Maybe tomorrow we are going to have different races. But again, if that happens,
not that part. Not that part. The fact, the part that
sorry. a committee gets together and announces whether or not. And again, I said that you said that how do people they know if I'm biased or not? This is not my view that I'm sharing with you tonight. It's not my view.
But yeah, I know you're saying this is science. You're saying this is science, but this is not your view. But I'm saying that I can find scientists that are saying what you're saying, and I can find scientists and scientific articles that are saying not about race. I'm talking about categorizing based on biological traits, categorizing people in different populations, right? I've seen many scientists do that. You're saying that's useless. You're saying that's dangerous. But I've seen many scientists and many publications do that, and you're saying they're all wrong. So I just don't know. Yeah.
I'm saying that because they're not living in 21st century, because they do not understand artificial intelligence, because they do not understand low cost of technology. Technology was expensive 15 years ago. 2000, billions of dollars was used to read DNA. Today is a question of few $100s. Before, when we were talking about artificial intelligence, we were talking about some TV games. But today we are talking about creativity, the third generation artificial intelligence.
So did it make sense before? Did it make sense before?
What's that?
So now that we could categorize people more individually, like not categorize. Now that we could look at differences individually because we have more resources. So are you suggesting that categorizing people based on genetic traits used to make sense when we didn't used to be useful because we didn't have the resources to do that? Are you saying that?
It was useless, that's why it failed. That's why it has so many victims. Anything they tried, it failed. You know, for decades, we have been putting people in different categories, and for decades we have failed. But let's forget about history. All I'm saying that people, maybe they don't realize where we are living. Maybe they don't realize when we are talking about third generation artificial intelligence. We are not talking about data analysis. We are talking about creativity. And then when we are talking about low cost, maybe people, they don't understand that we are talking about few boxes, tens of dollars. This is a gift of life.
Why
this
artificial? What does this got to do with artificial? Artificial intelligence, because data could be analyzed faster? Is that why you're mentioning artificial intelligence?
No, because a human being is not capable to analyze it.
Right.
It's too many. For example, we have 3 billion pairs of letters, adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine, right, with our DNA. And we have lots of crossing over and combinations. We do not have the capability to analyze it. And then DNA is not the final code for the protein. It's the code, but so many other things are going to happen as well. What's going to be the major player is the complicated cellular structure, not only DNA. So now we are talking about interactions. A human being does not have the capability to understand all these interactions. It's too complicated. For every human being, we are talking about trillions and trillions and trillions of data. Now that I'm talking to you, to your viewers, in a second, 3,000 trillion chemical reactions are happening in your body. In a second, 3,000 trillion chemical reactions are happening in your body. We just do not have the capability. You can go to school, you can be high IQ, is just beyond human beings. But today, thanks to artificial intelligence, we have that capability. So we have to put data together, and that's what artificial intelligence needs, good data. The data that Armin is talking about is useless and dangerous if you are going to use that data to feed the artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence needs good data, and good data is coming from science. So let's celebrate where we are living. Let's celebrate at which time we are living. And let's be grateful that we have this amazing gift of artificial intelligence, that now we can say hello to Jim, we can say hello to Albert, we can say hello to Elizabeth, we can say hello to somebody who may be 6 feet tall, somebody 7 feet tall, somebody is shorter. But let's forget about the color of the skin. Let's forget about the color of their eyes. If we are going to use them to classify them, they are useless, and they are not going to help us at all with feeding what we have to feed, which is the artificial intelligence.
Okay. Parsa.
Okay, okay, Armin, I have a question for you.
Me?
Beach is asking, Beach is asking, wouldn't dropping race bring equality faster? Think about dropping Islam. Compare.
Let's focus on our.
That's for Armin.
No, let's focus on our guests. I talk to our live chat audience all the time, so I want to take advantage of having such a special guest here today. But
so let me ask you a question from.
Let you go ahead. You wanted to say something.
Okay.
No, people are not the same. This equality, I don't understand it either. People are not the same. People are different. Individuals are different. So don't think that we have to treat everybody the same way. We should not treat everybody the same way. People, they are different. They have different talents. Hopefully, we are going to change our educational system. Currently, our educational system is completely retarded. We bring kids into these schools, we teach them for 12 years, and then they go to college. And then when they graduate, after 15, 16 years of studies, they don't know that much. There's a problem with the educational system as well. But hopefully in the near future, we are going to educate person based on who they are, based on their capabilities, based on their capacities.
Right.
Based on their talents, based on who they are, based on their structure.
To me, it seems like there's a suggestion that any form of categorization is going to lead to mistreatment of people. But my question is that just because some people use categorizations of people as a method to mistreat a certain group of people, why do we think that all form of categorization of people or categorizations based on biological traits, why do we think that categorizations based on biological traits has to necessarily lead to not treating people as individuals or disrespecting or mistreating any group of people? Why does it have to?
Because we tried, we cannot. Again, race, you have to satisfy certain criteria. We have tried, we have used genetic markers. We have used all different kind of genetic markers to categorize people. It just doesn't work. It doesn't get us anywhere, basically. I have no problem with that. Don't think that if tomorrow we are going to have different races with human beings, I'm going to be sad. I really don't. I'm talking about the reality. And again, remember, it has been done. It has been used. We have used different markers, genetic markers.
So if a black man goes to the doctor today and the doctor says, oh, because you are black, I suggest this, because you're a black man, I suggest that you take this medicine because you might be predisposition to this kind of heart disease or something. Should that person switch their doctor right away if if their doctor says something like that?
Yes, because the doctor doesn't know anything about the overlap.
But that's very common. That's very common for doctors to do that.
There is something that call it Bayesian statistics and the priors. This kind of a statement today is dangerous. It means today the doctor is not up to date. Today you cannot rationalize like that. Today you cannot. So I'm going to be very clear, straightforward with my answer. Yes, that doctor is not a good one.
Okay. All right, Parsa, go ahead.
Okay, another question for Dr. Nowzari. Timothy asking that, doesn't he acknowledge that actual people are living in the aftermath of these rejected racial categories, slavery, Jim Crow, etc.?
Can you just read the questions that are directed at the doctor? Because our audience hear from me a lot, so I don't think you should. When we have such an important guest with us, I don't think it's a waste.
This is for Dr. Nowzari. Doesn't he acknowledge it? He actually means you, Dr. Nowzari. Doesn't he acknowledge that actual people are living in the aftermath of these rejected racial categories, slavery, Jim Crow, etc.?
Oh, I see.
I mean that. I don't understand the question.
So let me see if I can. Maybe I think what they're suggesting is that even if these are fake, useless categories, these categories have been used as a way to oppress people So now they should be used again as a way to lift up people from the, from the oppression that they felt.
No, because science doesn't disappoint you. If you have more scientists in our media, in many of these debates, that you always have politicians debating, university biologists, university people that are experts in physics to talk about that, you wouldn't have so many problems. No, I really trust science. I do trust science. No, I'm not concerned about that.
So, for example, let me see if I can use an example. Like, for example, in Israel, right? The way that they decide who's a Jew is the same way that Nazi Germany decides who's a Jew. And their reasoning for that is that if you are Jew enough for the Nazis to put you in gas chamber, then you're Jew enough to deserve the protection of Israel. So
no, let me stop. No, let me stop you here. I have been in Israel many times. I mean that I'm really surprised to hear that from you. That's not my experience.
Okay, this is what they told me.
No, that's very wrong. Okay. That's very wrong. That's very wrong. I've been there, and I'm not Jewish.
Yeah,
I've been there. They invited me 4 times.
Me too.
Really, I'm very grateful, and I can tell you that that is not what I have experienced there.
Oh no! So this is not what I'm not saying. This is what people believe. First of all, I've been in Israel, and I couldn't find 2 people that agree on anything in Israel. So I'm not saying this was a majority view. What I'm saying is that what they were explaining to me, the reasoning behind the government policy of who's categorized as a Jew or not. I'm not saying they're right. I'm not saying this is the right way of doing it or not the wrong way of doing it. I'm just saying that they use the definitions of their oppressors to protect the people that might be oppressed.
That's not true.
Okay.
That's not true.
Okay, so they gave me the wrong information then. So for example, a lot of black rights activists, right? I hear from them, for example, that they say race is made up, it's a social construct, it doesn't mean anything, but given that this category was used against us, we now are going to use this category as a way to identify people that need help. You're saying, no, science doesn't disappoint you. If you just go with the scientific methodology and naming, that is the best way to fight that kind of oppression.
Yeah,
that's what you're saying.
That's a nonsense type of thinking as well.
Okay.
You go with who people are, basically. I mean, that's really nonsense kind of thinking.
So you must be very much against identity politics and the people that So what do you think about, like, for example, certain universities adjust who they let in and who based on people's races? You think all of that is nonsense? Like, for example, if schools try to make sure that they hit a certain quota of black students, right? Do you think that's wrong? That's a bad policy?
If I am going to be one day a policymaker, I will change the educational system. So I'm not going to say whether or not it's correct the way it is. I really believe that our educational system from day one is wrong. Just having kids, and I really think that we are destroying childhood. We are destroying childhood. They go to that school, they're anxious, they're stressed, our kids, and then after 10 years, let me give you an example. Napoleon, age of 26, I believe, he was the head of French army, and he was really capable. I believe it was at the age of 29 when he attacked Egypt and the British army. And his teacher in geometry was Laplace. I mean that he was a very capable man. I mean that or if you look at Darwin, you just talk about Darwin. Darwin, when he was 25, and also the guy who was heading the Beagle, basically, he was also 26 or 27. Our educational system really has to change.
Okay, but I understand that you want to completely change the education system, but are you against affirmative action? Are you against having racial quotas in schools? Are you against
I'm not really qualified. I'm not qualified to answer that question.
But isn't that a clear answer for you, given that you don't think that there's any...
No, because that's a policy. making decision. I'm not qualified for
Okay,
that.
so if it's a policy making decisions, and you're saying you're not qualified to that, so wouldn't the social scientists be like, this is exactly what we're saying,
No, no.
for the purposes of social policies, some of these categories make sense. For example, they might say affirmative
No, let
action.
me stop. It's going to take us away from the topic of tonight.
Okay.
That I would be forced to say yes or no, and then it's not that simple. Look, already about race, I've been talking for about 1 or 2 hours.
Right.
Let's focus on race.
Right, but the reason the race, race, but the reason why I say that it's a little bit might be similar. Okay, I'll drop it right after this. But you're saying that you're just saying that if we're not qualified to call something a race based on biology, we shouldn't call things race. But given that you're saying you're not qualified or not educated to say if affirmative actions make sense or not, they're saying affirmative actions works based on social definitions of race, and that's why definitions of race from social sciences might have some use. That's just what I'm saying. Yeah. Okay.
It's going to fail. It's going to fail.
Okay. Okay. So you do have. Okay. All right. Go on, Parsa.
Dr. Nowzari, there's a question for you from RPG. Would you agree that there are the scientific definitions of race and the social definition of race, and we use the social definition to identify ourselves within a community?
With the second one, no. With the first one, yes. We do have race in biology. Race is a biologic terminology. It is a scientific terminology. It has been misused. Now, when it comes to identity, we have to encourage everybody to think about our ancestors. We have common ancestors, 500 people. We have to encourage everybody to think that we all came from Africa, all of us. That's what we have to identify with. And we have to realize that if they made it, they were not powerful. They were not strong, our ancestors. They had a long trip to go through. If they made it, because they cared about each other. Because they were taking care of each other. They were together. Just think about that. Few hundred people, no food, no hotel, no nothing. That's what we all have in common. Our history is what we all have in common. Our genes are what we all have in common. Why we want to forget so many tens of thousands of years and just focus on something which is recent, really. They were not thinking that way. These are all really recent. We have so much in common. But the most important one really is our history. We all have the same ancestors. And again, as I said, we're all African after all. You're all African after all.
Parsa, just one more question, because we have taken so much of the time of the doctor, and thank you so much, by the way. You have been very generous with your time. So just to ask one more question, and then after the last question, if you have any final statements that you want to give our audience. Okay, Parsa, go ahead.
Okay, the last question. Alexa is asking, so if race doesn't exist, how can we determine who is Jewish for Israeli citizenship, for example?
No, I mean, again, another question.
And ask a different question. The answer is that I think the doctor's answer would be that we can't, because there's no such thing as race. Okay, but go on. A different question.
Okay, there's no other question.
No, Judaism is not a race.
Not according to Israel.
We don't have Jewish race. We don't have Muslim race. Just remember, this is a scientific word. You cannot just use it any form or shape that you would like to.
So you disagree? So you would tell Israel's government that their categorizations is completely baseless. Israel's government.
But why you keep focusing on Israel?
Well, okay, we're going to. All right, so let's just leave it at that. Do you have any final, reminders, or final things that you want to tell our audience?
When DNA was read, everybody, all biologists, they were shocked because they looked at DNA of somebody from Africa, from China. They were shocked. They said, it cannot be true. That's impossible. That's impossible. So it was repeated. The same results. They look at the genes of somebody who is 7 feet tall and dark skinned. Another person from North Pole was the same. And then this question was asked, how many genes do you think we discovered? People, they said, well, 400,000 or 500,000. Everybody was wrong. All the biologists, they were wrong. The closest was a French guy who said 28,000 genes. And it was about only 25,000. Banana has 100,000 genes. Banana has 100,000 genes. A grain of rice has more genes than you do. Now, we were even more shocked. First, we are looking at DNA. Is 2 meters, 6 feet. You read it, all these letters, all these similar letters. Whether it's John, whether it's Catherine, whether it's dark skin, light skin, blue eyes, blonde, Swedish or Finnish. The same. And then now we are looking at genes. So small number of genes. And then more recently, we are looking at genes and we are looking at proteins. We realize that it produces amino acids, but some other stuff, they come and they take some of those amino acids away. So we got interested in interaction. And then we realized that this interaction is so complicated. So there is a lot that we are discovering. There are a lot that we are finding about. And I really think that we should not waste our time with all topics, with all discussions. Let's forget about all this nonsense, Jewish and Palestinian and dark skin, light skin. Let's take advantage of this gift. Truly, this is a gift. What science told us in year 2000 is a huge gift that we have not taken advantage of it. We have not. Let's forget about race. Please, next time, even in the airport, they write, are you Caucasians or you are Spanish or others? Write others, I'm sapiens. And hopefully all of us, over a few years, all of us in airports, everywhere, we are going to say others, sapiens. So let's get used to that. So who are we? We are Homo sapiens sapiens. What's the first Homo? Our genus. What's the second one? Our species. And what's our race? The third one, subspecies, sapiens.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Again, that was beautiful, and thank you so much for your time. And, yeah, I hope I didn't come off as too strong. I just wanted to have played the devil's advocate here a little bit. But again, thank you so much for being patient. Thank you to Parsa for reading the questions. Sorry if we didn't get to some questions, but again, we really I hope our audience realizes that this is a very unique opportunity to have you here because your time is very valuable. So we really appreciate that you sharing it with us.
No, thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you so much for everybody.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nowzari, and thank you, Armin. And as you said, I tried to read as much as could, but please forgive me if I missed some.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So I'm going to end it here. So again, I'll see you guys again in another discussion. Please subscribe to our channel. And where can people find you? Your books, your articles, follow you on social media.
My papers are on Medline or any library. Any university library is free of charge.
Okay.
They just put Nowzari, Nowzarih for my first name. And the computer, then they get the list.
And where can do you have any social medias that people could follow or? Twitter?
Yes, my Telegram is at Hessam Nowzari.
We will put a link in the description for that.
All right.
All right. Thank you again, and I'm going to stop this streaming.
If I may say something, I organize a symposium every year, and I do not accept sponsorship. I really believe it's one of the exceptional symposiums that does not have sponsorship. We don't accept it. Okay. And it's NowzariSymposium.com if they are interested to watch the previous ones.
Okay, I'll put a link in that one as well.
All
okay,
right.
Perfect. All right, I'm going to stop.